Why is it that everyone is attacking Zack more than they're attacking each other? If you ask his naysayers, they think Zack is a dangerously naive populist, a politically illiterate moralist, or to some, a secret Islamist trying to bring about Sharia law while also being a gay woke commie degenerate. Anyways, these are the usual things you hear when someone wants a genuine change from the status quo, and currently, Zack is the only relevant figure arguing for that. His rapid success does not just come from being an outsider, but some genuinely good strategies. The first being, listen and bring it back to class. Whether it's street interviews, contentious debates, or even those Zoran-style videos everyone is doing these days, Zack routinely finds a way to point the fingers back at the billionaires and politicians. Too many people are on welfare.
Apparently too many people on universal credit. What you rarely hear is that lots of people on universal credit are in work, and that's because work isn't paying. So what we're doing is subsidising employers and making it impossible to earn a living when food prices are going up, but wages are still stuck in 2008.
What about all the struggling landlords?
But ultimately, if you're a landlord, you are doing better than a renter. Now, if you're someone who owns one home, a lot of that money that you're making won't actually be on the rent. It'll be on the capital gains on the building that you own. But we have landlords that sometimes own dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of properties. And again, it's about the deep injustice between a very small group of people who own a very lot and then masses of people who own absolutely nothing.
You guys just want to increase taxes on everyone and punish hard work.
No, you don't want to rise in income tax?
No, people are tired and exhausted. Their wages haven't gone up, but food prices are going up. How can you make some of the hardest working people who haven't had a pay rise in years pay extra tax and allow multimillionaires and billionaires to continue not paying capital gains?
Being able to swiftly redirect anger back at the elite is also very effective when speaking to reform voters. You're not going to easily undo years of conditioning hate towards immigrants, but you can move the needle, and it first starts with making them feel heard and understanding their actual bread and butter issues.
Why did you vote for him?
Because I thought he was standing up for the British people. We're at breaking point as it is with the population. We're all on such low paid jobs and everything just keeps going up.
This will make them more willing to listen to your solutions, instead of sounding like another politician giving a lecture while they feel like their quality of life is declining with time.
What if I told you the asylum system costs us about £3 to £5 billion, but if we tax multimillionaires and billionaires properly, we could be raising about £25 billion.
That would make things so much easier.
We also want to stop the boats, but we think we can do it through safe and legal routes, where people can come over here, they can have jobs and can be paying in tax. So actually it's all contributing to our society.
That's it. If they want to come over and work properly, I cannot refuse anyone who needs to better their life.
In the past, Green Party politicians felt like side characters in the periphery who were characterized as single-issue tree huggers. But what makes Zack stand out is the fact that he advocates for environmentalism through the lens of ordinary people's issues. Most people did not know what the Greens stood for outside of the environment, but one way Zack has overcome this is from having key, memorable policies, most notably with the wealth tax and nationalising water and energy. A majority of people support a wealth tax of 1 to 2% on assets over £10 million. This affects the type of people that influence the media, so it's in the interest of the media to try and delegitimize a wealth tax. On top of this, many people feel like the government is not working for them, which makes them susceptible to thinking that taxation is a form of theft. But Zack is well prepared for this, and the media class are quick to change the topic when they realise he knows his shit.
Because what's happening there is we're getting the hoarding of assets, and that's bad for all of the 99%, because it means once those very few people have hoarded all the assets, they then buy our democracy, and they buy our power, and they buy our public services. And that's why we've got to take them back. You should contribute to this country, and frankly, if you don't want to do that, then I'll happily wave you out the door.
Along with their tax revenues, they could be paid.
I think if they're not paying tax anyway, and we know they're offshore taxing, actually they're just leeching off society, as opposed to going, we are asking you a very reasonable demand here to pay a tiny amount on your wealth.
But they do already pay, I know you would like them to pay more tax, they do already pay an awful lot of tax, and they could be walking out the door with the tax that they already do pay.
I think the awful lot of tax is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. If you look at most of Western Europe and most social democratic or socialist countries, they're not paying very much tax at all, and in fact I think most organisations recognise. I'm not talking about a little bit of tax here. I'm not talking about someone who's running the corner shop or someone running, who is self-employed or running a small business. I am talking about multimillionaires and billionaires, and even then, I'm talking about a 1% tax on assets of £10 million or more. Now, you could reasonably say to me, by the way, is that enough? And I think it probably isn't. And so I think I've got a role in the Green Party to go, could we be bolder with this actually and tax the wealthy more? But the fact you get so much pushback on 1% shows you how much corporate capital and capture there is in this country. That's such a basic suggestion that people should probably pay a little bit more in tax is received, I don't mean you're doing this, but just generally with such outrage and such kickback. Well, I think it's time that we stop cowering to that kickback and go, if you want to leave, leave. There are plenty of people in this country who are happy to pay tax. And I want people to live in this country who want to contribute to this country.
Probably the single most thing that Zack reiterates is lowering bills, which is at the forefront of people's minds. In response to this, his opposition are always trying to paint the Greens as not having any idea how economics work and purely driven by morals.
But there's no magic money tree. Liz Truss proved that. So where does the money come from to buy Thames Water?
Well, we first of all need to listen to the shareholders actually, because they say that the assets are not worth anything. And if we removed shareholder dividends, right now they're receiving billions and billions of pounds of profit, and took the assets back in public hands for no money, that's the first way to step into taking water back into public hands.
Okay, so you're going to lower my water bill.
And also it's important to say though that it sometimes gets presented as a radical idea. We know that the water companies were in public hands. They were then privatised. I would say that was the radical idea, when now 30% of our water bill goes to profit at the same time that they're pumping sewage into our waters and charging us extra for the privilege. Well, I think we need to look at energy in the round. So the first thing I think we need to do is decouple gas from energy, because right now that's inflating the price and it's ridiculous and there's absolutely no need to do it. We also need to be putting gas into a strategic reserve, looking at something like a RAB model, or indeed nationalising our gas system. The fact that Thatcher nationalised for water companies, I think in 84, then British Gas in 86, I think is generally recognised as a disaster.
For a long time, people have felt like the government has taken away more from them than given to them. And so the idea of relieving people's struggles at the expense of inconveniencing the elite is such an alien concept, something that feels unimaginable when it's always been about political decisions. Now, one thing you've probably already come to understand from all of this is that Zack has a good understanding of the current media landscape. Like everyone and their mother, Zack's got his own podcast and also a very active social media presence, a big reason why they're able to reach the youth. But also, don't underestimate how perpetually online older folk are. Using #reform or Nigel Farage gets me engagement like no other. Now, like I said earlier, everyone is adopting those on-the-ground conversational style campaign videos popularized by Zoran, and Zack's got a similar thing going for him, except with a more cinematic edge. The difference between Zack and others is that there is always a surge in green membership after these campaign videos. So, what makes Zack's videos better? Well, the appeal of these videos is to combine fast-paced snappy editing with a conversational authentic feel, which is why populist messaging works. It taps into the conversations and struggles that people are already having, things like cost of living and rents being too high. If Starmer attempted this, it would sound something like,
so we're bringing you that very hip, very cool campaign, but with the same poll-tested, market-friendly, centrist ideas that help maintain the status quo. We need to develop more, build more, and cut all the red tape that's slowing us down. That's why I co-sponsored the Affordable Market Solutions Act, a bold bill that directs public subsidies to private developers to build a limited supply of affordable housing over the next 7 to 10 years. We don't need socialism, we need public-private partnerships.
Speaking on the media landscape, there are times where you have to be an unyielding debater. At the end of the day, debates are just about aesthetics, and aesthetics play a big part in how a candidate is received by the general public, and ultimately, their electoral viability.
Zack, you're a politician, so you're trying to paint me as just caring about billionaires, which is ridiculous.
Well, no, you started by saying this is my responsibility. You've come on here as a very wealthy individual and dared to say on TV, I don't want to pay a bit more tax. When this country is crumbling, we have 4 million children living in child poverty, and you're saying, I don't even want to pay a little bit more. That's morally reprehensible. I mean, what's the assumption behind your question here? Because it sounds
conservative communities might not support some of those policies. We're not here to litigate whether or not they're right or not. I'm talking about conservative communities potentially might not be supportive of policies that legalise prostitution, drugs, and increase rights for trans people.
I think there's some deep assumptions there about what a conservative community is, but here's what I would say more widely. I said it when I became the leader of the Green Party, is you don't need to agree with me on everything. You need to agree with core values and fundamentals of the Green Party and what I'm putting forward. If anyone agrees with me on everything, then that's weird. Actually, what we need to do is build bridges. And look, I'm really proud that a constituency as diverse as Gorton and Denton just voted for a female plumber by a party that has a gay Jewish man as a leader.
I asked you about our borders.
None of which.
I asked you about fuel prices. I asked you about immigration. I talked to you about drugs policy. I could have asked you about abolishing the horse racing industry. I talked to you about abolishing private landlords. These are all kind of vital things which we want to know about. I thought you'd like to answer these questions.
I think you're really struggling here. 10 days till a local election, and today I'm announcing that I want to bring buses into public control and make sure that we're reducing bus fares in cities and in rural communities. I also want to talk about what's happening in Manchester, in Newcastle, in London, in Wales and Maseneth, where Greens are picking up incredible momentum. It's interesting you don't want to ask me about any of these things. You want to just do shock jock tactics. And by the way, this is why people hate the media.
It's honestly so nice to see a left-wing politician actually push back against the cynical framing from the media and right-wing agitators. If Zack continues to be consistent with his positions even when push comes to shove, it will go a long way in building trust and authenticity, especially among a sea of politicians who are routinely backtracking and strategically shifting their positions. On the contrast to debates, there is something that Zack does that feels rare these days. He does normal things. You can find him clubbing, dancing, elongating titties, and just being fun. Zoran showcases this even better, and it makes him look more embedded in his community, and they can also flaunt their charisma. Now, I'm well aware this has been a Zack glaze session.
Please don't be glazing me here, Zoran.
But the Green Party's success hasn't been a one-man mission. There has been a lot of great work from organisers and the membership in building this movement, and there's still a lot of work to do as the base continues to establish the Greens as a genuine eco-socialist party, especially with things like nuclear energy, NATO and foreign policy. With all that said, Zack is a breath of fresh air and very much needed in a time where fascism is growing. Both Zack and Zoran have laid out the blueprint for what progressives should do going forward in a world where liberalism is on its last leg and our options are socialism or barbarism.